The sun rose that morning, but it gave no warmth. People looked up and saw a pale disk in the sky. Dim, cold, wrong. For the next 18 months, it would stay that way. No shadows at noon. No summer at all. This is the story of the worst year to be alive in human history. And according to historians, it isn't 1918. It isn't the Black Death. It's a year almost nobody talks about, 536 AD. Let's go back there. It starts in early 536, somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere. A massive volcanic eruption, so violent, so cataclysmic, that it throws a blanket of ash and sulfur high into the atmosphere. Scientists still argue over exactly where it happened. Iceland, maybe? Or somewhere in North America. But the effect was global. Within weeks, that ash cloud spreads across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, and it blocks the sun. A Byzantine historian named Procopius was alive to witness it. He wrote that the sun gave off light without brightness, like the light of the moon, for an entire year. Imagine that. You wake up, you go outside, and the sun that has always warmed your skin barely registers at all. Crops don't know what season it is, neither do you. And here's where it gets worse, because 536 wasn't a one-time disaster. It was the beginning of a chain reaction. Tree rings from Ireland to Siberia to California all tell the same story. A sudden, brutal halt in growth, starting in 536. That's not folklore, that's hard, physical evidence locked inside the wood itself, confirmed by dendrochronologists decades later. Then, in 540, before the world had even recovered, it happened again. A second massive eruption hit. Then, a third, around 547. 3 climate-shattering events in barely a decade. The skies over Europe and Asia stayed disturbed for years. Summers that should have been warm stayed freezing. In parts of China, snow fell in the middle of summer. Crops failed. Not for one season, for years in a row. And when crops fail for years, something predictable and horrifying happens next. Famine spreads. Historical records from Ireland describe a failure of bread lasting years. In the Mediterranean, chroniclers wrote about people dying in the streets, too weak to bury their own dead. But the famine wasn't even the worst part, because weakened, starving populations are the perfect breeding ground for something else. And in 541, it arrived. The Plague of Justinian.
It began in Egypt, carried by fleas hiding in the fur of rats aboard grain ships that were desperately moving food across a starving empire. The infection spread down trade routes into Constantinople, the beating heart of the Byzantine world. At its peak, the historian Procopius, the same eyewitness from before, claimed the city was losing up to 10,000 people a day. Modern historians think that number is likely exaggerated, but even conservative estimates are staggering. Bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. Some were left in open fields. Some were sealed inside towers because there was simply nowhere else to put them. The plague didn't stay in one city. It spread across the entire Mediterranean world and beyond, killing an estimated 15 to 25 million people over the following 2 centuries. Some researchers argue it may have killed close to half the population in the regions it hit hardest. So picture living through this. The sun stops warming you. Your crops die in the field. Your family goes hungry for the second, then the 3rd year in a row. And just when you think it can't get worse, disease starts moving through your town. And there's no explanation for any of it. No germ theory, no satellites, no understanding of volcanoes on the other side of the planet. Just darkness, hunger, and death arriving in waves you cannot predict or explain. For years, historians debated whether 536 deserved this grim title. But in 2018, a Harvard historian named Michael McCormick, working alongside climate scientists, analyzed an ice core drilled from a Swiss glacier. Ice cores trap tiny particles from the atmosphere every single year, like a frozen time capsule. And what they found in the layer from 536 was unmistakable. A massive spike in volcanic fallout, precisely matching the historical accounts of darkness and crop failure. That's when McCormick said the sentence that would define this year forever. He called 536 the beginning of one of the worst periods to be alive. Not the deadliest single event, not the biggest war, but possibly the single worst stretch of time to have been a human being on planet Earth. A
perfect, brutal chain reaction of volcanic winter, starvation, and plague, all within about a decade. And here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. The people living through it had no idea why any of this was happening, no sense that a volcano thousands of miles away had done this to them, no understanding that the plague was carried by fleas, not sin or curses. They just endured it. A darkened sun, dying fields, and a disease that emptied entire cities. And somehow, some of them survived long enough for the sun to finally return. We know the cause today only because ice, tree rings, and old manuscripts happened to survive long enough to tell us them. The next time the sky looks a little dimmer than usual, remember 536. It's proof that history's darkest chapters don't always come from war. Sometimes they come from the sky.